On a cold autumn evening in London, Emma sat by her window, watching the rain blur the streetlights. Her hands trembled as she held a letter that had arrived earlier in the day, a letter she had not expected after so many years. It was from James, the boy she had loved since childhood, the boy who had vanished from her life without a word when they were both 18. She could hardly bring herself to open it, but curiosity won over hesitation. As her eyes scanned the paper, tears welled up. James had written about his regrets, about how leaving had been the biggest mistake of his life, and how he had spent every year since thinking of her. He explained that his father had forced him to move abroad for work, and in his immaturity, he had chosen silence instead of explaining himself. Emma's heart ached because she had spent years trying to understand why he had left her waiting at the train station with her suitcase packed, ready to run away with him as they had promised. That night was still etched into her memory, the way she had stood there, clutching her small red bag, convinced he would come rushing through the crowd to take her hand, only to wait until dawn broke and realize he was never coming. For years she hated him, and then, slowly, she forgave him, but she never stopped missing him. She folded the letter and pressed it to her chest, whispering his name as though the walls could carry it across the distance. Days passed before she replied, her hands shaking as she wrote, telling him of the emptiness he had left behind, of how she had built a life but never filled the void he had created. She did not expect a response, but one morning a knock came at her door. Opening it, she found James standing there, older, his hair flecked with gray, his eyes filled with the same warmth she remembered. For a moment, time froze. Neither spoke, and then he whispered, "I'm sorry, Emma." She broke down, tears streaming as years of pain poured out, yet at the same time, an undeniable relief washed over her. They sat for hours, speaking of everything and nothing, of lives lived separately yet connected by an invisible thread. James admitted he had been married once, but it ended because he could never give his heart fully to someone else. Emma confessed she had never married at all, always comparing every man to him, always feeling like part of her belonged to the boy who never showed up. Their reunion was bittersweet. They could not reclaim the lost years, but in that moment, they realized the love they had once shared had never died, only waited patiently. They spent the following weeks walking along the Thames, revisiting old places, laughing at old memories, crying at what was gone. Sometimes silence spoke louder than words, and in that silence, Emma felt whole again. Yet one evening James grew pale, coughing heavily, and confessed he was ill. He had written the letter because he feared he had little time left. Emma's heart shattered, but she held his hand and vowed she would not let him face it alone. In the months that followed, she cared for him, reading to him on quiet afternoons, playing their favorite songs, reminding him that love could exist even in sorrow. When the end came, James lay in her arms, whispering, "Thank you for forgiving me." Emma kissed his forehead, tears soaking his skin, and replied, "I never stopped loving you." After his passing, Emma visited the train station where her 18-year-old self had once stood waiting. She sat on a bench, closed her eyes, and for the first time in decades, felt peace. Though their story had been marked by separation and pain, it was also a story of love that endured against time, distance, and regret. And as the trains roared past, she smiled through her tears, knowing that in the end, James had come back to her.